Hello, everyone. I'm Geni Whitehouse, presenting to accounting professionals on behalf of Fathom. Today, we'll be discussing dashboarding for growth using Fathom. The point of what I'm talking about today is really to share what I've learned about the power of focus. It's a great ability to be able to refine your field of vision and to refine the things you have to keep up with and to refine the things that you have to learn about all the time. So I'm going to share my own experiences. And unfortunately, I am not responsible for building this niche that we have, or niche, as I say from the South. I had the good fortune of falling into a practice that was already focused on the wine industry in Napa Valley. So I'm going to talk about the ways that we've actually grown our practice in that area based on the tools that we found that really support us in being advisors. And when we talk about growth, so the topic of this session is about dashboarding for growth. And the first thing I want to do is clarify what growth means. Most people think growth means selling more, doing more, working harder, expanding our client base. And I'm here to offer you an alternative, which is to grow by doing more for fewer clients, to deepen your connection to those clients, and to really go and become a trusted advisor. The keywords that we like to bandy about in our profession, but I want to bring those words to life. And that's what we're trying to do every day with our clients in Napa Valley. So I'm going to share that with you and give you some of the ways that Fathom, which is for us really a go-to tool. It helps us do all kinds of things as advisors that we weren't able to do before tools like this came to the marketplace. So I just want to give you the context around what we're doing. And so, yes, I live in Napa Valley, California, which you all probably can already tell I'm not from Napa Valley originally. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina originally, but I moved here from Atlanta, Georgia. I'd lived there for 15 years. So lots of time spent in the South, arrived in the middle of California in 2004 and started working with wineries in 2007 with no knowledge of wine. I mean, could barely figure out what to order and what paired with my grits and bacon. I showed up in the middle of Napa Valley, a well-known established Cabernet producer, high-end wine, fancy highfalutin wineries, and I was scared to death. And so I had an opportunity to work with a CPA firm that had a practice already going in this valley and was already focused on wineries. But my role has been to expand our awareness, to expand the services that we deliver, and to really get out and work with these wineries. So I'm here to tell you, you don't have to come in with a huge amount of expertise in that particular industry. I had expertise in accounting, and what I had to figure out was how to connect the dots between the expertise that I had and the needs of the clients in the wine industry. And as I started digging into that, I discovered that there are lots of ways where not being an expert when you start can help you become a trusted partner and someone who advises clients in all aspects of their business. So I'm going to share my own journey and talk about how the Fathom toolkit really fits in with what I'm doing and using and providing advisory services, both through the CPA firm as a CPA, but also in a separate business that I founded, which is a bookkeeping business, again, focused on winery. So I've done it actually in two different kinds of businesses, and the toolkit actually helps in all instances. So the Napa Valley is this really unusual area. There's a 30-mile, 5-mile wide district, 30 miles long, 5 miles wide district that has wineries in it. And if you ever visited Napa Valley, you know that to be true. You can drive along the main two roads and see wineries on both sides of the street there, plus a million other wineries, it seems, all the way around this area. And it's because of the unique geographical aspects of this area that we have so many wineries. So I'm not telling you that you must have the similar advantage in order to build a focused practice. But if you have an interest in building a focus, what you can do today is use the remote focus and still work with clients wherever they happen to be, but focus on a particular area of service that you want to deliver. So again, I have a unique opportunity because I happen to have found myself through some mysterious set of consequences in the middle of the premium wine country, Napa Valley. But you don't have to have that today. You can do the same thing via virtual geography on the cloud. You just have to figure out how to establish your expertise. And again, I'm going to share some of the things that I've learned about doing that. The first thing I want to clarify for you is, why should we do this? And there are benefits of focus both for you as the accountant and for your clients, because a client wants to come to somebody to help them who really understands the context of the industry in which they practice. And I started out I worked in a CPA firm in Atlanta. And that was after I started with Deloitte a long time before that. And then I had done corporate tax and a bunch of different things in the accounting space as a CPA. And then I went to a firm in Atlanta where I eventually became a partner, but I had built a practice around clients in the local area of Atlanta, and they were all on Peachtree at the time. And so I would go out to small businesses and consult on the computer systems. And what I found is it was difficult because each client was different. And so I had to come in and understand the unique aspects of their industry. They had different charts of accounts. They had different focus. Some people had inventory, some people didn't. And so the problems were very diverse. And so I would go in each time and have to basically relearn what I knew about however their systems need to be set up. And sometimes we had construction clients and we had project costing and things like that. And so I did it and I could figure out some of the similarities across systems, but it was much harder for me to think about all of the unique issues that these clients faced, and also to stay on top of all the regulatory changes that impacted them and everything else that was unique to that client based on the kind of business that they had. And so the benefits that I've seen, the huge benefit of focusing on the wine industry is every time a new regulation comes out, I know the impact. I know which areas it's going to impact for those clients. And I can be very proactive about communicating the impact of those changes in a unique and focused way. And so it allows me to sort of streamline where my head needs to be anytime something changes in our world. And as we all know, our world has changed a lot lately. And so being able to focus on what kind of loan advice is going to help, what kind of USDA programs apply to farmers and specifically wine growers and things like that gives us a leg up versus some of our competitors in this space who have maybe a small division focused on a particular industry or no focus at all. And I'm much more able to get to the right messages that really can help my clients. Hopefully that's the goal, right? As advisors, as accountants, we really are in this game because we want to make a difference for our clients. And by focusing your practice, you're able to be much better about getting there with timely information and also providing a lot more value. So, we touch everything. We touch their technology, the regulatory environment. We work with providers who support businesses who are in this industry. And so we've got depth and information that can help these clients. And that's when it starts to be fun, I believe, for us as accountants, when we can really make a difference in their business, when we can really have an impact. That's when we are satisfied, I believe, as accountants and advisors to our clients. So there's benefits for us because it's much more fun. It's much easier for us to go deep. We can really establish a depth of knowledge that we can leverage across multiple clients. And for our clients, it's better too, because they have people who understand them. There's all kinds of unique terminology. And once you understand that language, then you can leverage it and make your clients feel more comfortable with you. It's a huge benefit for marketing because we can say that that's what we do. We focus on wineries. So if the winery comes in, we already get where their issues are going to be. We understand cash flow is going to be a problem. We understand costing our inventory is a pain point. We understand which systems are going to help you and which ones are going to not help you, the ones that need to be improved and connected and changed. And again, we can add services to that practice because of that focus. So when you're developing a niche, as I say from the South, what it means is that you're going to have to go deep. You're not going to just be able to touch the surface. You're going to have to go into maybe deeper waters than what you're used to doing. And again, for me, moving into an industry that I didn't really know, I knew that there was good wine out there. I couldn't pronounce much of it. And I didn't know all of the ins and outs of the business by any stretch of the imagination. I knew it was a complex space to be in. I didn't even know how complex the inventory costing was. And I didn't know that wine was in the inventory in many cases for up to 5 years or more sometimes. Bulk wine, the unbottled wine, can sit in storage and in cellars being processed for 3 to 5 years in some cases, depending on the type of wine that you're working with. So there are a whole bunch of things like that I had no idea about, but I had to have faith that my knowledge of accounting could be leveraged in a way that could serve those clients. And of course, the first couple of clients are scary in any industry. The first client every time, if we're doing continual different industries, is going to be scary. The benefit of this focus is the first client's scary, the second client is less scary. And by the time you get to the third client, you've seen the patterns, and then you can get smarter about the kind of service that you provide. And also you get to know the lingo. One of the things that was a real benefit to me is I got an opportunity to teach before I had really gotten deep into the industry. So I had a friend who was building an educational service offering and asked me to create a financial accounting for wineries course. Now, this is before I start working with wineries, before I really know how much about, very much about what's going on in that industry. And so what I did is use that as an opportunity to, first of all, connect my own ignorance of the wine industry with the way people feel about accounting. And so I leveraged my ignorance in teaching the course. And I start off by saying, here are the terms that you guys use that I don't understand. And here are the terms that we use as accountants. And let's see if we can connect the dots for both of us. And so I didn't pretend to be an expert when I started teaching, but I used my expertise in accounting and my ignorance of the wine industry to get smarter and to also make my audience, my trainees, feel more comfortable with the message. So teaching a class, believe it or not, is a great way to get knowledgeable. And again, the first class is scary because you don't have the context and you might say the wrong thing. But by the second class, you've gotten feedback from students. You've had stories come out during the class discussion, and then you can quickly upgrade your own knowledge of that particular industry. So as scary as that sounds, coming up with a course that will help you educate those people about accounting in that context is one way to get yourself more skills in a much quicker way and to overcome your lack of confidence about that industry. Now, I still can't pronounce some of the wine that we drink, but I did get really connected to what these people were suffering with as a result of teaching these classes. And I've been teaching the classes now for 13 years. And it's a really fun way to connect with people, to spread the brand for our firm, and to continually learn about what's evolving and changing in their space. So if you're going to be an advisor, if you're going to build a focused practice and provide advisory services, and that's what I think is required if you're going to go deep in a particular practice area, you've got to make some changes in the way that you approach the work that you do. There are some things that you have to do about yourself, some expectations you have to bring to bear on your own persona. And one of the things that you have to worry about most is having curiosity. Now, notice I don't say you have to have all the answers. We have to be curious enough to ask these people who are, in fact, experts in their own business what they know. And then we have to have some knowledge about how to get to those answers, how to help them find their own answers by asking different questions. And yes, you need to understand some of the terminology eventually, but you don't have to start as an expert in something in order to establish a niche in a particular industry. Again, the most important thing you can bring to bear is curiosity. And I think it helped that I came into an industry and didn't presume to know anything because I was forced to ask the dumb questions. And that, by the way, is one of my biggest strengths. I'm good at asking all the dumb questions. It's on my resume, y'all. But that is a benefit. And it also puts people at ease. We don't fly in as the expert accountants with our briefcase full of answers, that we instead help guide them to finding their own answers. And so that's one of the critical components of building a niche, is be curious about what they have and then have a way to build your own knowledge. And again, you don't have to come in that way, but you can get there. And, if you're curious about what they're doing and you ask questions like, wow, that's really weird. Why do you do that? I've never seen that before. And then listen to their explanations, you can start making sense of what happens in the industry. And then what we have to provide if we're going to build an industry focus is education. And that to me is so important because, first of all, the whole accounting thing is a big black mystery to most people. They don't know what we're talking about. They don't understand our terminology. And we have a chance to educate them about how accounting relates to their particular and unique business specialty. And then we have to communicate with them in a different way. We have to, again, show that we understand the context around the work that they do, and then make it easier for them to communicate with us. And then the real ultimate objective, I believe, in both advisory and focusing on a particular industry is to not just show them stuff and tell them how badly their results turned out, but help them come up with ways to improve their outcomes. And that's what, to me, an advisor should be. Somebody who makes an impact on not only the business, but also the people working in that business. And when we're able to do that, we're going to have all the business that we can handle, and we're going to be gratified and feel like we are really serving those clients and helping them stay afloat. So I just want to share that, anything good that I say is not my own. It comes from my association with Edie Osborne at Mentor Plus. And I've worked with Edie since the early 2000s when I was trying to figure out how to move the needle on our profession, how to become better and to add more value to our clients, and how to really make an impact. And so I discovered these tools, and I've been working to combine technology and methodology to change the accounting service delivery model. And so this tool is at the core of everything that I do. It's what we use in our firm. It's how I came to this firm. We connected with each other because I had been doing things with Mentor Plus and teaching accountants how to apply technology and delivering advisory. I became so enthusiastic about it when I left a previous job. The CPA firm reached out and said, "You're in our area, come work with us and apply these tools that you talk about all the time with wineries." And I said, I don't speak winery, but okay, I'm willing to try. And it's been a great ride ever since. So I work with the CPA firm 2 days a week. I also have a bookkeeping business, as I said, built on QuickBooks Online. That is 100% remote. We have a small team working with wineries and bookkeeping as well. So all of these concepts that I'm sharing with you are things I don't just think about and talk about, I do them myself as well. And this is a basic methodology. It takes you from the skills that we already know we have at the technical level, all the way out to being Kaizen, continuous improvement leaders who help companies really change the way that they operate. And that's what we do with these tools. And you go from level 1, technical foundation, to level 2, where we really start to educate and communicate what's happening with the numbers. And then we take that information at level 2 and leverage it into changing the planning that we do for the future ahead. At level 4, this is where we connect the line workers, the people at the front of the business who are making things happen, to the financial outcomes of the business. This is where activities and financial outcomes become really clearly connected. And this is where you get people to actually change their behaviors in support of whatever objectives you establish. And then level 5 is where we just keep checking in and refining, looking at measures and metrics, and helping people update them as needed as the business grows and changes. So that's the graphic. That's the level 5 graphic that communicates it. Here's just another way for you to see it. These are the pieces of the work that we can do. Most accounting firms are stuck in level 1. Some get as far as level 2, but go no further. Our goal is to get you to apply these tools or somebody else's tools in delivering advisory services for a particular focused industry area. And when you start to do that, it changes everything for you and for them, as I've already said before. So I'm going to give you some of the tips about how we put this together in a package that establishes us as really an industry leader in our space. And so if you're going to go deep with somebody, you got to go deeper than just the financial statements. And this is where, we've got all the expertise. We spent all this time learning to understand the financial information to make sure that we're complying with yield, gap, and all the other regulatory requirements, especially those of us who are in the CPA space. We're bound by a whole bunch of regulatory requirements that we have to follow. In the bookkeeping side, we have a whole bunch of gap rules that we want to make sure we're staying on top of. But it's not just a financial problem that we need to address if we're going to help a client in any market space improve their outcomes. And what it is a financial problem, a financial symptom that is based on issues across that operation. There might be issues in the customer side of the business, operational problems, people problems, and end-in-mind problems. The vision is not articulated clearly. People don't know what they're working for or why they're doing what they're doing. And so if we're going to acquire a broad understanding of the business, we have to open ourselves to looking beyond what we know from the financial statements. We might be doing measures and metrics today, but many of those, from my experience, tend to be financial statement-based metrics. And that doesn't take us far enough if we're trying to learn what really goes on inside an area of focus, a particular industry or a particular way of doing business. We've got to go deeper than just understanding what's happening at the financials. We use a tool called the Scope Grid. Again, it comes from the Mentor Plus methodology, and it starts with this. The dollar sign is the S in scope for financial, and then it's SCOPE, as you see articulated there on the slide. So it's a scope methodology, which is to expand the view. And then we actually interview clients that are coming on board and ask them questions around each of these 5 areas of the business. When we do that, when we ask questions at a deeper level like that, we have already established ourselves as a unique accounting professional, because the whole world is not yet doing this, even though I've been talking about it for a while. That intake meeting, that prospecting meeting, when you start saying, yes, we understand that you're a winery. We want to hear from you about what you think is happening across the business, not just the financials. And then we can help you really resolve the financial issues by looking at everything that's going on within your business. And this we do even if somebody comes in with a burning fire related to a financial problem. We have people come in and say, we want to do a budget. And then we go, okay, we can help you do a budget. We can help you do a forecast. We can help you plan what you want to do. But first, we got to understand what's going on in your business. And that's going to go beyond the financial. We want to know what works, what doesn't work, and what it is you're trying to achieve across each of these 5 areas of the business. And once you have that perspective, then you can go back and say, okay, let's see if a budget is the problem, or if it's people that don't know what to do with the budget, or you're not setting an appropriate budget because you're not getting input from all the people who really have an impact on the information you're trying to manage. So this perspective is, to me, the first step in any sort of business that you're working with, but particularly if you're going to work with a niche or a niche, if you're going to work with a focused industry, you need to understand all of the drivers of whatever outcome it is you're trying to influence. So start there. So I'm going to start with the financial area because that's where we are most comfortable. And I'm going to show you how we then connect that to the bigger picture for a focused industry and a client. So in level 1, the first step, and I'm going to use some of the things from the methodology as well as bring in some of the cool information that's in Fathom. We're going to talk about a meeting with the client, and we're going to ask them just a couple of questions. And this is an excerpt from one of the tools that's part of the methodology that we use. But just think about these simple questions. How would you characterize the accuracy of the information you get from your general ledger? Now, they may not know what a general ledger is, but you say, how would you characterize the accuracy of the information is on your financial statement? Or whatever financial information you get, do you think it's accurate? And then the second question you ask them, this is where you start moving the needle in their own mind, in that client mind, is how would you characterize the relevance of that information that you're receiving from the financial statements or from whatever source? So they might be absolutely positive that the information is accurate that comes out of the accounting software. But then when you ask them, is it relevant? They go, no, I run my own report. I create a different report. I have a flash report that I put in Excel that takes 2 months for my accountant to create. So when you ask this question and then say, are there any other reports that come from the general ledger or other systems? And if yes, how are they used and by whom? And then you get to this question, do you have a dashboard or scorecard? And where do those numbers come from? And then how many of those numbers are non-financial? And that's when they go, all of our ratios are coming off the financial statements. And that's when you have an opportunity to take them on a deeper ride through their own information. So this is a step that you can do just by asking for their chart of accounts and then putting some questions around it. So say, I want to see your chart of accounts, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. I want to know also who has access to your financial information. And then you can take it from that one tool, that one question that you ask, and go all the way across their business and provide some advisory services and support. So this is the kind of place that you start. You get in there, you start talking about the general ledger or the financial statements, the chart of accounts, and then from there you broaden your questioning to get them to start thinking about the things that they don't get today from whatever system they're on or whatever advisor they're working with. And this is where we then connect their data to Fathom. So if they're on QuickBooks Online and they are QuickBooks Online Advanced, they've already got a license for Fathom HQ. It's part of the toolkit for those online advanced users. If they don't have it, then I suggest you set them up. They have advisor programs that you can get a better price and you can connect and have multiple clients on it. But if the client wants to do it directly and pay for it, it's $44 a month to make that connection. And then what happens is that you can go in there and look at their chart of accounts. So this is the beauty of having a tool like Fathom that overlays what's going on inside of QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online's chart of accounts can be configured to meet the regulatory requirements, to meet the GAAP requirements for that business. And we might want to have it in a summarized way to meet one particular reporting requirement. But what you can do in Fathom is take that chart of accounts inside QuickBooks, overlay a special set of reporting that just happens in Fathom. So you can leave the financial statement layouts the way they are in QuickBooks for certain uses and create separate reporting that is very flexible inside Fathom. Now, Fathom is not going to write back to the QuickBooks database. It's only going to read it. So this lets you set up multiple different reports that you can save and then share with different audiences. And so that's one of the first ways that this can help you build an industry focus. You can create reports in Fathom and then share them across different clients. And you can also benchmark each of these clients against each other and then build those independent insights into your reporting for each client. So we can create a benchmark group of wineries and then show people in a generic way how they perform against the benchmark averages. And so this is how you start to establish yourself as an expert. I've got a bunch of clients. I'm going to show you how your marketing expenses as a percentage of revenue compared to everybody else in the wine industry. And then you start establishing yourself as uniquely qualified to add additional value to those clients. So then you can review the financial picture for each client, and you can do this for individual clients by building your own KPIs, and then you can compare them to either their own data in a prior period or a target that you specify, or if you have a group built, you can benchmark them against others in their industry. So this is where you start to get into educating that client about some of the metrics and measures that pertain to their industry. You can also use Fathom, even if you never show anything to a client, as a tool to educate yourself about what's happening with the business. This is one of the things that I discovered early on. And back when I started in 2000, when I left a CPA firm. So I left a CPA firm as a partner in tax because I realized I didn't want to be doing taxes anymore and I wanted to have a bigger impact. So then I went out in search of technology to really make me more valuable to clients and able to do things like this. And so eventually I found a tool that was an interactive dashboard. And when I started bringing client data into that dashboard and trying to understand how that tool was displaying different pieces of information and moving things around, it was the first time some of these relationships made sense to me. So I think that Fathom can be an educational tool for you and your team because you can go in there and look at benchmarks. You can start understanding where the issues are going to be for that industry. You can go into the screen that I'm going to show you, the goal seek screen, and move things and start to see, oh, if I improve AR days by 5 or 6 days, look what it does to cash flow for the client. Now I understand where I need to focus when I'm having a client conversation about cash flow. Or maybe I can look at inventory. In our case, it's a big issue for cash flow. It's inventory that's driving the cash flow problem that I'm seeing. And then I can help my client figure out what to do about it. So Fathom can be used to educate yourself and your teams about how these ratios and relationships really make an impact for your own client. So even if you never show it to a client, there's huge value in doing that. And again, that was a huge thing for me to realize. I didn't understand all of these interactions between financial ratios until I started playing with different things to see what was happening. And so the first thing you can do is do comparatives, and you can generate these KPIs and then compare the client to themselves, to prior years, to their own goals that they can set. And that by itself is a huge value. But these are primarily financial ratios that you see coming in by default. What you can also do in Fathom is create your own custom KPIs and measures that go way beyond the financial statement measures. You can count things like visitors, number of email campaigns. You can bring in all of that data and then build ratios that combine financial and non-financial measures. And again, because you're in a focused industry, those measures can start to be very specific and unique across multiple clients. So you can build your own benchmark groups, and you see that you get segmented benchmark group data. You can see what percentile you fall in once you've identified those groups in Fathom. So lots of really cool stuff that can come right from the QuickBooks Online data without you having to do anything. You can customize how the chart of accounts looks inside Fathom and which accounts are grouped together. And then you can create these unique benchmarks that really give you insight into how a particular client is performing. So that's really the easiest, most basic thing that you can do is change the way that you display and share financial information for a client. But we have all these other aspects of the business that we potentially want to consider when we're working in a focused practice area. So the financials covered, so let's move on to other areas. And what I'm going to do now is take you to the scary one for us, the touchy-feely people thing, because that is so important to the financial outcomes of the business. Before we can drive any other change through the business, we got to understand who the players are. And so what we need to do is find out who the leadership team is. And this is one of those questions that you just kind of ask nonchalantly when you're starting to meet with an owner who's complaining about some sort of challenge that they have in the business. When you ask who's on the leadership team and you find out who they've included and who they've excluded, you're going to find out a lot about what the real issues are in that business. And when you ask them who's on the team, you find out who they've left out. And that tells you, usually it's the accountant who they don't invite because they don't like the person who tells them no. But that's an indicator that you've got a problem, that all the people aren't on the same page. And imagine if the accountant is not included, how difficult it's going to be to make sure the other people are working towards a shared financial objective. So ask them if anybody's missing. Have we got the finance people included? Do we have all the customer side of the business included? Do we have the operations and the people all considered? And then what is the strategy? So the next thing we got to do is get those people in a room and make sure that they understand the financial concepts that you're trying to impact. So we're going to assign meeting pre-work for any leaders that are come together in a meeting, and then send them this link. I wrote this slide deck to help people understand financial statement concepts. So send them this link if you want to, or find something else, but get your leaders together in advance of a meeting and try to educate them as best you can. Then you can bring up some KPIs from Fathom and show them some of the critical measures for their business, and then ask them about areas where they might be able to have different activities that can improve those results. So you want to go through, and if you're creating a KPI session to educate leaders about what's happening in the business, you want to really pare down this list of KPIs. You don't want to show them 10,000 different metrics. You want to show them 4 or 5. And in Fathom, you can turn off the metrics that you don't want to display. If you don't know what a particular measure is, or if you don't think they know, you can generate this report in Fathom. It's part of the monthly performance report. And you can print out some of the definitions and pass these out to people who are going to be in the meeting so that they have more context around it. You can also educate yourself if you're not clear on what some of these things mean. So we get the people together. We have the owner setting the direction. And what we do is bring up a Fathom Goal Seek screen. And we bring that screen up and we show the different components and drivers of different financial outcomes. But we're going to ask the leader, what goal do you have for the business? What's a financial goal that we're going to focus on? The leader establishes that, and you can see that there's an item there. We've chosen operating cash flow for this example because most of the companies that I know are struggling with that. So the leader sets that high-level goal. You put that into Fathom, and then you say, what's your goal for operating cash flow? And in our case, it's to go from negative $650,000 to a positive $120,000. Fathom will present you with this screen. It'll show you the drivers that influence that outcome. And then you start the conversation with the people gathered in the room, the owner and the leadership team. And you say, these are the things we've got to change. We've got to work on price, volume, the cost of the items that we're selling. We have to reduce fixed expenses. We've got to collect faster, and that's measured by receivable days. We've got to potentially pay slower. That's measured by payable days. And we got to do something about our inventory that we have on hand, because we have more inventory on hand than we are able to sell in a year by a huge amount. And so these are the areas that we've got to fix if we want to have more cash. And that means, by the way, more money that we can pay you, leadership team. So we connect the dots that way with this graphic. And the beauty of this is that it is an interactive screen. It's not just sitting there and saying everything is bad and you got to fix a bunch of stuff. What you do then is get those leaders to tell you what they can change in their particular area of control. And if you look at that goal seek screen and you break down who owns what, the customer side is controlled by sales and marketing, and they can influence the price and the volume of what's being sold. The operations team on the production side owns what's going into cost of sales. And so you can look at what's happening in the operations side of the business to correct that metric. And then if we go to the expense side of the business, the operations group is going to have control over purchasing decisions that are going to influence what we're able to do on that particular driver of the financial outcome. The people side of the business, there might be some impact on who we've got sitting in the accounts receivable team, who's managing collections, what sort of goals and objectives do they have? Do they have processes and procedures that support them in collecting faster on the accounts receivable? And again, back to operations, processes and procedures on what we're doing to pay our vendors, how we're setting them up for payment, how we're processing checks, and all of that. That's all driven by the operational side of the business. And then finally, on the inventory side, we have operations, warehousing, if we're in that sort of business, production, and the manufacturing side of the business. So you see, by bringing up that screen, by bringing up all the leaders who influence financial outcomes and presenting information this way, we now have them engaged in solving whatever problem we're trying to address. And it's going beyond the financial statement issues into all the other things that feed that financial statement. So now we've gotten financial covered, we've gotten into the customer side of the business, operational side, the people side, and hopefully eventually we're going to get to the end in mind, the clarity of vision that's going to support us in making these changes. So we bring these people in and now we say, okay, if it's a price problem, what can we do on the customer side? Sales and marketing, what if we raise the price? Can we do it? And then we slide these levers and show the team what the impact will be of making these decisions. So we drive the levers across, and Fathom will fill in the progress as we make changes to individual drivers of that financial goal that we set. We have a commitment now from each of the owners of this particular factors, and then we print this out and say, here's what we agreed to do. Let's come back next month and check in on our progress against the goal that we've set as a team. And then you send people off to go work on it. Now the question is, okay, we've agreed what we want to do. We want to raise price. We want to reduce our expenses. We want to do all these things. And now you're going to sit there as the advisor and go, okay, how are we going to do this? I'll have a tool for you that'll help you get comfortable in your own knowledge. But you want to ask the leaders of those areas what it is they're going to do to raise price, or how they're going to effectively reduce their expenses on the marketing side, or how they're going to change this or that or the other thing. You want them to have the ideas, but you don't want to be worried that you're not going to be able to lead them to the right solutions. So we created a tool. I created a tool that aligns with that goal seek screen. So each goal that you come up with, I've given you some action steps you can take, and then what you might do as an advisor to help that client make those changes happen. And so there's a tool called Strategies to Action that I created in a spreadsheet. This is an excerpt from that. And these are a couple of goals that you might get from the goal seek screen. If you want that full document, please email me or reach out, and I'll be happy to send you the full document so that you can look at it as well. But this is a supplement that goes along with the goal seek screen. And it gives you some comfort about some of the things that might influence that. Now, if you're focused on a particular niche like I am, you know exactly the kinds of things you can do to increase price. So if I'm in the wine industry and I want to effectively raise the price, I can do things like create smaller bottles. So go, instead of a 750 milliliter bottle, I can produce 350 bottles, and then I can raise the price on those so that I can charge more for the smaller units and get an effective increase in the average price per unit across my winery. Those are the kind of things that you get smarter about as you do more and more clients in the same industry. But also remember, you want the client to think about the goal that they've set and then what it is they can do within individual departments to achieve that objective. And again, this is just some examples of actions you might consider for different goal seek activities that you've identified. So now we've got our teams on board. We've covered the financial aspects of the business. We've got the customer people joining in on the solution, not just reading, but being part of it. We have the operations team engaged in owning some action steps. And we've worked on getting the people not only educated, but also involved in designing the metrics and measures and the activities that are required as part of that. So you can see how, if I'm going to build a focused niche, to have all of this coming together and going deep within that business is going to help me get smarter and smarter and add more and more value across all of my clients. And it's also going to make my clients realize that it is possible for them to achieve improved financial results when they work together in this way. So the next thing is, we've gone through all these other areas of the business. The next thing is, what is it we're trying to do? We've got to be aligned on what the goal is for that overall business. We've got to have a clear direction in order to get there. And it's way beyond what we do on the financial side of the business. And what we do is work with our wineries on developing their why. Why do they exist? It's the Simon Sinek why statement that you've all, I'm sure, heard about. Or if that's not an option, we look at mission and vision. We talk with them about exit strategy and what is it that owner is trying to accomplish. So we need clear line of sight to where that company is trying to head. And again, we've seen it all across the wine industry. We know from being focused that we have a lot of people trying to build a legacy. There's a deep connection to the land and farming out here. And so many people are trying to build a legacy. When we find out that's the goal, then we need to make sure that every single thing that we do with them is lined up in support of that goal. So we can't just dig in and build the budget for somebody if we don't know this stuff. So this is a critical component of both our practice focus and our ability to go into advisory in a valuable and useful way. So understand the clarity there around what it is they're trying to do. And then and only then can we go and try to build a forecast for those clients. And that's something that we can also do in Fathom. Fathom has just released this great feature that takes the information from QuickBooks Online, brings it over for you, and then gives you all kinds of cool ways to modify that information. One of the challenges that we have is that we have all these different sales channels in the wine industry, and we wanted to be able to forecast differently based on the cash collection experience. And Fathom has really thought of everything when it comes to this forecasting, because I can go line by line and specify the timing profiles. And you see the example here. I have this retail channel in my sample winery, and I can say that those collections are expected to occur in the same month versus my wholesale sales, which are going to be collected in 30, 60, or 90 days, hopefully faster. Who knows what the economic impact of collections are going to be in the future and going forward. But we can go in and scale these, each individual line items. We can apply different rules to the forecast. We can change the timing profiles, and it really makes these forecasts easy to do and extremely powerful to modify based on your own industry requirements. And again, because I know the wine industry, I know the kinds of things that I need for each client that I use to create a forecast. So I can get really smart about modifications to the core stuff. If different wineries do weird and unusual things, I can always go in and modify. I can add new line items using micro forecast. Different scenarios can be stored in here. This forecasting tool is a great boon to anybody trying to build a focused area of specialty and anybody trying to become an advisor and really serve their clients in a deep and valuable way. So I encourage you to check that out if you haven't already. It's a relatively new feature that came out, really deep functionality and designed to really give you the control over all aspects of how you build a forecast for that client. It has special drivers that you can create. Again, you can bring in financial data directly from QBO, from QuickBooks Online, but you can also import non-financial data like square footage or acres or number of cases or number of units. You can bring in all of that data and then build formulas that create the forecast based on different relationships between some of those components of data. So a really well thought out forecasting tool, not very difficult to figure out. You could start with your actuals and then go in and modify. You can bring in different rules and drivers and different assumptions, and you can really make it fit with whatever kind of business you're working in. But once you figured out what to do for an individual client in your focused area, then you can leverage that knowledge across all of your clients. So once you have alignment with the business goals, and again, please don't skip this step. You need to understand that business and why they're doing it, what their real goals are. You understand the owner's personal goals as well. If somebody really wants to sell that business, there's no point in trying to forecast it as if they were trying to build a legacy. So let's say somebody has a legacy plan in mind. They want to keep it in the family forever. And somebody else just wants to maximize value and sell quickly. You have very different goals. You have very different activities, very different steps that you want to take from those two perspectives. And so you need to know that before you dig into doing the cool and whiz-bang spreadsheet that we all know and love. So make sure you get that end in mind out on the table at some point. Make sure that end in mind, that goal, that vision, that why is not only clear to the owner, but it's clear to everybody on the team. So if I were going to gather a team and build a budget or forecast with that team, the first step would be, here's our goal. Tell me what kind of stories you can share from the last year that really support the fact that that is why we are doing what we're doing. And our COVID experience and all of our recent economic challenges have given us a great way to vet our vision, our mission, our purpose, our why, because you should have some stories that indicate whether you in fact walk the walk or whether you were just talking a good game and didn't really deliver on that mission and vision that you thought was important. So capture those stories and then dig into building the spreadsheets and getting all those cool models that we know and love put together. So now we've connected the dots for our client. We've brought them together. We've shown them some insights. We've given them some tools and metrics. Now you're ready to focus. It's time to take those steps and repeat them with more and more clients. And before you know it, you're going to have a specialty developed. By the second client, you're going to be a lot more comfortable. You're going to understand trends. You're going to see repeating patterns. And then you're going to have the confidence that you need to do great work for your clients. And the cool thing about this is that there's so many different things you can do in a single app. You can take Fathom and go in lots of different directions to build that advisory practice around that industry of your choosing. Next thing you have to do is get the word out. I recommend highly that you build your own sample client. And I try to make it funny in my case, a client that you shows up everywhere you go in your company. I have a QBO sample client. I have a Fathom sample client. I have all kinds of places where that sample client name is going to pop up, designed only for me, and indicates that I have knowledge of the wine industry, or that I'm at least focused on it. Use that Fathom goal seek screen with your sample company then in all of your prospective sales meetings. And then you're going to write, speak, talk, do whatever you can to get the word out, and then deliver services that show your unique expertise for those clients. Don't forget about those people that are also serving that niche. Network with all those other people who are talking about that industry as well, and you will see your service opportunities expand at a rapid pace. The result of all that is happier clients and more valuable services, and hopefully fewer clients and less effort on your part and higher value for everyone. Thank you very much. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for Fathom for allowing me to talk about this on their behalf.